Shaping the 20s, ladies and gentlemen, the session that everybody's been eagerly waiting for, and it's been a phenomenal build-up over the rest of the sessions today. Cricket, cinema, and royalty, all infusing and coming together beautifully. I am at a loss for words. It's a type of story that everybody needs to hear and listen to, and it's also inspiring in so many ways and forms. So I'm going to now invite on stage Debjani Ghosh, President NASSCOM, to tell us what to expect and to introduce our guest of honor this evening. Debjani, the stage is all yours.
Hi, good afternoon. Oh, the energy is too low for this session. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so who doesn't know who my next guest is? Anyone in the room who doesn't know him or needs an introduction? So my next guest literally needs no introduction. He has royalty written over his entire demeanor. He played the sacred games of style and substance. And he is truly today one of the finest actors we have in the industry. But his interests are not just limited to acting. He can converse on any topic, be it from physics, be it philosophy, be it politics. He's interested in reading, he's interested in music, and he's interested in cricket. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any delay, let's put our hands together to welcome the 10th Nawab of Wataudi, Saif Ali Khan. Thank you so much for coming, Saif. You're going to do the left hand shake, please.
Hello, everyone.
So they've been eagerly waiting for you.
Okay.
So, Saif, before we start, I want to give you some good news.
Yes.
In this entire gloom and doom of economy slowdown and all of that we've been going through in India, the IT industry, the people in this room have delivered an absolutely fabulous year. A year of growth, a year of revenue growth, a year of job growth, and they've proved that this is an industry you can absolutely depend on no matter what.
Well, then we have something in common. many congratulations. I mean, you know, we could use the good news, of course. Yeah. I mean, someone has to keep the ship sailing.
So congratulations
many
to
congratulations.
all of you. Okay, so we are going to start right at the beginning, childhood, okay? So you had a very interesting childhood. You grew up surrounded by royalty. You grew up surrounded by cricket and surrounded by cinema. It may not be in that order, but you had all three play out in your life. And you were surrounded by greatness. I mean, Mansoor Ali Khan Pataudi, Sharmila Tagore, these are absolutely the greatest of greats. So you were surrounded by greatness. So how was it for you growing up in all of this, this aura of greatness, surrounded by all these fabulous people? What were the expectations and how did you manage
I mean, whenever anyone asks me about growing up in royalty, I was born in 1970, and the Privy Purse and royalty per se was, what's the word? Removed from existence in 1971. So technically, I was a prince for a year, but I was very small. Most people don't understand what I say because obviously we live in a country that is so full of inequality that for me to say that we were not particularly privileged growing up sounds ridiculous. But the point is, I mean, royalty is only exciting when it's, first of all, I mean, for the person who is royal, if it is the mode of government, and if you're being paid for it, my father used to say. I mean, the Queen of England is paid a hefty salary to be the Queen. You know, the prince is in the news for not wanting to do certain duties. So royalty is a way of governance, and it's something you need to be paid for. India's moved on very fortunately without a revolution. They did not kill us all. It was quite a bloodless coup. Mrs. Gandhi removed the princes, and we became a democracy. And we're all very happy. I think I'd much rather be a movie star than you know, an outdated kind of prince. Absolutely. Princes in Rajasthan today are very different to how a prince would be perceived in Bhopal today, for example. So India is, you know, different from each state, is like, has its own value system. I mean, you go to Rajasthan, even a waiter in a hotel really likes the idea of royalty. I suppose it supports his livelihood. You have princes there that are quite attractive to tourism in India. So it suits us to have them there. Because, and then it's fine. When it doesn't suit us, we don't like it so much. So when I grew up in a lot of empty, kind of large spaces. There were laws designed to take the land away from the princes. It was called urban sealing. You couldn't have more than a certain amount of acres per person in those days. And we kind of grew up quite frugally. I mean, I don't remember ever having an excess of money. I mean, our pocket money was quite tight and regulated. And we grew up in an atmosphere where we realized money has to be earned and we have to be careful with it. If I say that to a kind of a normal gathering, people seem to not understand what I'm saying, because presumably I'm much more privileged than they are. But I hope you will understand when I say that we were taught from a very young age that we're going to have to look after ourselves. And if there was any privilege, it was in education, you know, that my parents said that we're going to try and send you to a good school so that you go to a good university and hopefully get a good job. And that was the privilege. I mean, I think a lot of people obviously don't have that also.
So, but you know, your parents, they were just amazing people. And when you grow up in a family where both your parents are so famous and such great people, how do you manage the expectations that come with it?
Well, you know, they're also very normal. My mother is an extremely normal, I think I can say that, like a very down-to-earth, you know, middle-class thinking, very strongly valued lady. So that kind of teaching, I don't know, ever since we were small,
she keeps you
the
grounded.
kind of thing she would say to us. And she was a very big star. But apart from getting very stressed out when she'd get ready and do makeup, which is something that I think has scarred me, more on that later. All actresses, they're like tigresses. You can't go near them when they get... Maybe all ladies, I don't know. But yeah. And I kept thinking, it's a party. Why is everyone getting so stressed out? And my father said, don't go near that. But she wore her stardom also very philosophically, you know. Never have I heard her saying anything flippant or arrogant. So there's that. My father also, the most pragmatic, down-to-earth man that I knew. So they had tremendous values. They would talk about other things. They would not really bring work home. Abba didn't talk about cricket. He didn't think we were worthy of his expertise. I mean, why would he talk to us about, you know, Andy Roberts' quicker bouncer or a slower bouncer? He had to really get the conversation out of him. He didn't like talking much anyway. My mother didn't discuss films much, and they talked about other things. They talked about, I saw her gardening, I saw her cooking, I saw her doing all these other things and living life, you know, and using, ultimately it's a job, whether it's cricket or whether it's films. It's not anything really more than something that should sustain your life and lead you to kind of be able to celebrate your life in another way. So it's always been a means to an end for us. And my father, I remember him telling us as kids, you know, don't show off and don't try and get into the act, and these kind of slightly Indian Victorian values of not being, we weren't allowed to get away with anything at all that was in any way could be called loud or, you know, trying to be center of attention. So I guess that makes a difference. I mean,
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. You talked about the importance of education, and if I'm not wrong, you were at Eton.
No, actually, you are wrong. I was at Winchester, which is...
You're at Winchester.
I'm quite touchy about my school. So
Oh.
Eton's based on Winchester. Eton's a very famous school. The thing is, if you divide England into church and state, the clergy, the church went to Winchester, and the royalty went to Eton. So therefore, they're a little more famous. Yeah, but not necessarily brighter.
But Winchester 2 is still a very, very studious
Yes, it is an extremely studious
institute,
environment. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's an extremely studious institute. You would not think of Winchester producing film actors, right? So how
No,
did
that
you?
would be Eton again.
Does it-
Yeah, they've got about 20 actors. I mean,
Really?
yeah, the guy from Homeland went to Eton. Tom Hiddleston went to Eton.
Wow.
Yeah, but you wouldn't, I don't know, I mean, there are a few actors. I don't think it's right to say that it's the kind of school that wouldn't encourage acting as a profession. It's quite artistic in that sense, I mean. But I think when we wanted to become actors in the 90s, there was still that thing where our parents wanted us to either do law or medicine and find some kind of safe job, you know,
Yeah.
whatever that meant. And it was our generation, we were among the first in Delhi, I remember. A lot of guys, Rohit Khosla, Rohit Bal, wanted to be designers and became such famous, successful designers. There was a more artistic strain generally in our generation, but it wasn't a popular idea when we came up with it. But sorry, what were you saying about the school?
No, I was just going to ask you about the journey that you had, because usually these schools are associated with very
Well, I
serious
think my father's idea
professions.
was settling down in England.
Huh.
You know, I think he's paid income tax at one point of about 98%. Yeah, in the 70s, and the idea was, you know, maybe you can become a banker in London, and that would be a good life. So I don't know how these things work out. The idea, I think when I finally told him that it's going to be Bollywood movies, he said if you had told me earlier, we could have saved a lot of money. But like I told Sarah, who has karmically done exactly the same thing to me, bill-wise, it broadens your horizons, you know. So I was like, yes, I hope they're broadened. So, yeah.
But, you know, despite your lineage and the family that you grew up in, as an actor, you're still a pretty self-made actor. I mean, you went through your struggles quite a bit. In fact, I hope I'm not wrong this time, but I heard that you actually got moved out of your first film.
You're very
You
kind,
lost
yes. I
your
was
first
thrown
film.
out, thrown out.
Thrown out of you. Thank you. I was wondering what's the right word to use.
I was thrown out for not showing enough enough keenness. I mean, I think I was meant to be sitting there, you know, after hours.
Huh.
A lot of people like that from the people they work with, you know, after hours keenness.
Huh.
But
You're talking to a crowd who can relate.
yes, you know, go the extra mile, that kind of thing. But it's a sycophantic kind of industry in that sense. I mean, people like a little bit of, I mean, some people, at least my boss, you know, expected far beyond the call of duty. Yeah, it was definitely a struggle. And it was a struggle also because with the whole Winchester priming towards London to kind of join an industry that was really hungover from Mr. Amitabh Bachchan and that kind of, it wasn't even the Dil Chahta Hai time, which was more young urban, so possible for someone to fit into, but in the India of the 90s, this wasn't a great qualification for being an actor, I think. It probably made it a little harder in terms of speaking the language and thinking the language. It took me quite a while to get to grips with that. And yeah, I think, again, I mean, a misconception is that, I mean, being privileged in the sense, I guess I am very privileged. I mean, we've inherited a palace, I suppose, so I mean, that's...
But you brought back the palace, right?
But I think I've earned, my parents haven't given me any money, very sadly, since I've been 18, I think was the last time. And really not a single rupee after that. And whatever I've done, I think I'm quite proud of. Educated some children in America, which, as you know, is not cheap. And everything I've done, including refurbish Patodi and to look after it and keep my father's memory alive there, has been from money earned, as my wife calls it, standing in the sun in Film City. You know, so that kind of thing. It's been entirely self-made.
So what kept you going? I mean, when in that initial phase of struggle, when you weren't sure how this is going to play out, was it just the passion to make it happen? What kept you going?
I don't know. There's a kind of code, at least among actors and the actors that I was talking to at that time when I joined movies, that the commitment it requires is almost fanatical. I mean, you have to really burn all your bridges, in a sense. I mean, you know, you can't leave an option really open for, okay, let's see if this works out for a couple of years and then I'll, you know, do something else. It has to be a situation where it's really all or nothing, and nothing means then you're going to be in a lot of trouble in a little rented flat in Bombay with absolutely no... I suppose I could have gone back home. My father said, listen, we have to talk about your future. He went to Oxford, so he used to say, make a list of what you can do and what you can't do. And it wasn't a very lopsided list, of course. So he said, look, I'm giving you 2,000 rupees a week, I think it was, pocket money. I hope it wasn't a month, I think it was a week. He said, I'll give you 20,000 when you're 18 or something, but, you know, is that what you want in life? And I thought, you know, I could live with that. So I felt, anyway, I digress. I left home, I left Delhi, comfortable life, and moved to Bombay and rented a little apartment. My mom helped me rent it in Lokhandwala with cane furniture, I remember, and started this thing. We used to all, I ran into Akshay Kumar in somebody's office. We were all struggling. We used to go and sit in producers' offices and try and get jobs. Bombay is an amazing city for people who come here looking for work. You know, even in the local gym, people would say, listen, I have an audition, but I didn't get it. Maybe you'll get it. Why don't you? So they have a little network of people trying to help. There's tremendous energy, I remember, among the young and come here to try and make something. Am I getting off the point again?
No. So, and what was the turning point for you? When did you know that, okay, I've made it, this is it?
So it wasn't working out, but I don't know. I was just in a situation where I said, I'm just going to keep trying to do this. I mean, you have to keep trying to do it. It's really like one of those inspiration stories. It was a Scottish king or something, no? Who saw a spider trying to weave that web constantly and failing. It has been quite scary. It's still scary. Sometimes you feel when things don't work, you understand why people tend to get superstitious, you know, easily. Sometimes when things go really well, you become super religious. When it goes really badly, you become super religious. You can't handle either extreme. You know, a couple of big successes and suddenly you're all like...
then you get confident.
Sorry?
Then you get confident after that.
No, I'm saying success also can disbalance you. You start feeling that, you know, it makes you superstitious. You don't want to change the color of a T-shirt you wore, or, you know, whatever. I mean, but I don't know. I guess perseverance and hanging in there, really, repeatedly. And the real trick in acting, I suppose, is if you've had some failure, to kind of act like you're a superstar on Monday morning. You know, we're actually not feeling very confident because so much of it is based on confidence. The easy days when you've had a hit and then you walk in there feeling good. But when you're feeling bad, to kind of, I think I've always found that difficult. And I've always been really pleased when I've managed to pull that off, you know. Working well, a little bit under pressure. But I think that's what defines us. I read somewhere that cricketers need to thrive under a certain environment, you know. You think it's incredible that they're playing under so much pressure, but that's what you need to be able to do. And I think it's the same in a slightly different way for actors.
Wonderful. You know, one of the aspects of your career, your journey till now that fascinates me is the diversity of roles that you've played. I mean, from Dil Chahta Hai, which is my personal favorite, to Omkara, and now you have two films that have come out, Tanaji and Jawani Janeman, and both are completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, they're completely, it couldn't be like, it's chalk and cheese, right? Completely different characters. So is this a conscious decision that you take that you know, I am going to do something different next time and I'm not going to play the same roles as this? How does this work?
I mean, yeah, yes and no. I mean, it's not a thing where you say, okay, look, the whole thing is I have to be really different. But, I mean, you have to find, luckily, I don't know, there's so many interesting offers today. It's such an interesting time for movies where people are coming up with such creative things. I mean, the whole Tanaji idea and the character and the way the director presented it was so, and the idea that it should be in 3D. I mean, the last film I saw in 3D, I think was like Piranha 3D or something when I was a kid. It was a great experience. So I was a bit mistrusting of the format also. But we've come a long way in our tech, you know. It's been amazing, that stuff. And all Indian technicians, I say Indian technicians because this stuff happens in Hollywood. That the film has been mounted like a small international American standard of movie, but our guys have done it in a record price, working really long hours, and really pulled it off. I mean, I remember my wife saw it and she said, well, she was a bit annoyed with me because I was late. So she started off with a frown, and in a second was like, my God, you know, what an experience that was. So directors are offering really interesting things. Films are really holistic kind of experience, not up to an actor really to say, okay, it's not difficult to choose the best of what you're offered. And when there is a diversity of offer, then just to choose something slightly different to keep yourself occupied. I've done a couple of commercial movies, and I don't think I can ever do something that's too brain numbing, you know? It has to be somewhere exciting, something, because life is also about balance. I mean, it is about balance, where if work keeps you happy and occupied, then you live with your family and have a holiday. I mean, you call it a holiday, but I call it life, you know? Like, it's not a holiday, that's what I'm working for. I mean, like, that's what I'm living for. I love having free time, and I love being creative in that correct proportion.
And what are the things you look for in a role? How would you choose the role? It takes a lot of guts to do the kind of roles you do.
It's instinct. There's a thing where you say that what is the situation that the character's in, or what's the drama of the situation, and what's the world like, and do you really want to get out of bed or leave your, you know, young child or children? And I mean, we're lucky we have that privilege. It's another privilege where you can choose like how much you want to work to an extent. So if it's going to be something, it has to be something that excites you, where literally when you go to sleep, you're thinking about this scene and you feel that, okay, I'm going to go there in the morning and there's that scene. You know, it's the scene where I do this. And that's really lucky, again, because a lot of actors sometimes can't choose that, and you have to be part of something that's larger than yourself, which is important also. But for me, that's the choice, really. What's the world of movie? What's it about? And it's an instinctive thing based on what you've done just now, like every reaction, based on what you've done. So, I mean, you've done a couple of, maybe something funny, or you've done something, in my case, a little too serious for a while, and then something fun comes along and you think, okay. And it's about, I think, a mistake I've made quite often is choosing what I like, whereas you have to also choose what you think people would like to see.
Yeah. Well, which of these characters that you've played has really stayed with you? One personal favorite?
I don't know if anything's really stayed. I don't think anything's really stayed. I still remember most of the lines somewhere. It's probably.
Which one would you relate to the most?
I mean, they're all very different, you know. I think our films have never given me the feeling that they are extremely real. They're nothing like my life. There are certain films that you would think, like, for example, if your mother is dying, it's nothing like you would imagine it to actually be. So you never feel, oh my God, that could have happened, you know? So I don't really feel any of those. I mean, like if you say the Tanaji character or the Omkara character is nothing like me. If you say the Dil Chahta Hai character, he's sweet and he looks a bit like me, but he's not really like me. So none of these guys, I mean, after a point, because our films are not really about a very realistic situation. I mean, they could be the films I've done,
Right.
I'm saying, you know?
Okay.
They're slightly, in a slight fantasy zone
Right.
in some way, you know?
Okay, fair enough. Um, one of the things I can think of, which is very similar between our industry and you, is that this industry is in a constant state of evolution. It's always having to try out something new, something different in order to stay relevant. And you, in your career, apart from the diversity of roles, you also experimented a lot with new formats. I mean, the partnership you had with Netflix, Sacred Games, was a huge success, especially season 1. It was a tremendous success. But it is not something that a lot of actors would be comfortable doing. So, how do you, I mean, it takes guts to do these new kinds of things. And
I mean, I don't know, my understanding of that, I remember there was a lady actress who told my manager, like, oh, is he doing TV now? You know, so I said, no judgment on TV, of course, but Netflix, I was immediately and always really impressed with the revolutionary kind of idea of that company. Because what they want to do, which obviously I think all of you know, is change the concept of entertainment, which is so radical. Big films on big screen have always been, you know, the big ticket number, and the small screen has always been something a little more accessible and a little, in some way, I'm not choosing my words, which often we have to choose our words so carefully today, in some way it's been considered less than the bigger screen. But Netflix want to give you that entertainment at a budget and at a level that is bigger than the film. So they're really changing the whole concept of entertainment. That whole bracket you have, that the big screen's where it's at, has to be questioned. Because, some of the budgets they have are bigger than films, and some of the quality and the kind of intellectual writing behind the story is better than films as well. So the environment of doing a Netflix movie is amazing. I mean, a Netflix original series, sorry, not a movie. Is astounding. Everyone's trying to be really clever. You have writers trying to write at their best. You have people shooting, you know, as atmospherically as they can. And a really, really remarkable experience. And you're trying to work. You know you're going to be judged internationally. So it kind of helps, you know. I mean, the more we connect, the more we compare to others, like our cricket team, I mean, it improves the game.
a role or maybe experimenting with a different format that you would absolutely die for, would love to do?
I don't know, I mean, just more of the same, really. I mean, if you'd asked me that before Tanaji, it was an amazing, amazing experience doing that movie. I keep thinking, I'm working on a nice horror comedy, which I think is very funny. Hopefully, you know, is one of the best scripts I've read. So I'm really looking forward to shooting that. But I've never had a fixed notion, and I probably shouldn't have. Again, I think I have an issue, which is that my personal taste and the way I've been brought up and the kind of things I've been exposed to might not be the most popular generally, you know? So I'd like to work with good producers, and they tell me what to do, and I do it. So it's not, I've never really had ideas much about what I should be doing, because I would be quite niche, I feel, in my, in some thoughts. For example, when I made Agent Vinod, I think I made it a little too Western, you know? So I trust myself slightly less in that department, but as an actor and the choices and the kind of film, I think I'm all right. But I've never thought, oh, I want to do this, or I'd like to play a spaceman, or, you know, I want to do an army guy.
No superhero movies coming up?
No. No, God, that's just, I imagined a diet.
Okay, let's change tracks a little bit. Let's talk to you about you, the father. And this is a question that is being debated a lot within our industry. That, you know, in today's world, we talk about you have to raise your daughters a certain way so that they're safe and they stay safe. And, you know, I strongly believe it's not about how you raise your daughter, but it's about how you raise your sons. And how do you ensure that your sons grow up knowing how to respect women and, knowing the meaning of consent, etc. So as a dad to two young boys, is there anything you do differently or you say with parenting advice that will help them become better human beings?
Well, I think respect is the most important thing. That if I can just boil it down, you can try and teach kids whatever you want, but they end up learning what you're showing them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even to respect them, and if they see you respecting the driver,
Yeah.
the gardener,
Yeah.
and people who are less fortunate than you, whatever, and if your attitude is sorted, like my grandmother's was,
Yeah.
even though she was, Begum of Bhopal, it was Ramu Kaka, and it was, Adab, can I have a, biscuit, please, in the kitchen. Others should get really upset. So I think if they see a respectful atmosphere,
Right.
and they understand that this is the way to communicate, they watch. I mean, my kid's looking at me all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And he's listening. I can see him, and I think I behave sometimes a bit better than I might have, because I can feel that it's going to be noticed. So I don't know, we all try and do our best. None of us are experts. I mean, I'm sitting in front of you. Doesn't mean I know anything. You don't, right? So I mean, I guess we try and set the best example as we can.
Well,
if
I
they
think
see
it's
you
such a great
respecting your
advice.
wife, they see you respecting ladies generally, and peer pressure. In my experience, peer pressure it's even more than parents. You got to keep them in the right environment. When the friend says, "Don't smoke," it's not cool. That's when you're okay. Otherwise you can do what you want. If that gang is dodgy, then we're in trouble.
Yeah.
It's like the peer pressure, if that's healthy.
No, it's great advice. I think kids do learn by seeing rather than by just listening to us telling them what to do.
But I think when we choose a school and when we choose friends and when we see, we should influence that as much as we can. That what is the environment that they're hanging out with? Who are these guys? What do they talk about? How do they talk about things,
Absolutely. Saif, are you okay to take a few questions from our audience?
Yeah, sure.
We have tons
I'd love
of
to.
questions. But before I hand it over to them, I have to ask you one, because a lot of our Twitter fans have been wanting to know this. Since you are such a role model for millennials, they want to know how much are you in touch with the millennial lingo? So I'm going to ask you a few words, and you can tell me if you know what they mean. I hope you do. YOLO.
Someone's told me that 10 times doing movies and I've forgotten again because I have no interest in this expression. I have no interest.
Guess.
I forgot again. I've been told 10 times.
You only
live once.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll
A round
forget
of
it tomorrow.
applause for him for that. Okay, we do not, this crowd is not the millennial crowd, so I'm sure even they will be struggling with it. But, okay, FOMO.
They'll only be interested trying to decode their kids' messages. Like, what did she say? What did he say? What? FOMO is fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. Brilliant. MIA.
MIA? It's not missing in action,
It
surely.
is. It is.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that millennial? I thought that was like old school army.
The millennials have owned it now. AMA.
AMA? I don't know.
Anyone in the audience? AMA. Oh my God.
Ask me anything.
You guys are good.
That's like me to you.
Okay, on that note of ask me anything, we will open it up to the audience for our questions. Put your hand up and the mic will go to you. Yes, Saif, there's one there.
Thank you, Saif. Thanks for being too liberal and honest as well.
Hi.
Hi, Saif. What I initially wanted to ask was whether there's a third season of Secret Games, because there's still a bomb taking next to my office building. But given the setting of the audience, what I'll ask is, where do you see the digital platform going? I mean, Netflix is one thing, but do you see a next phase of the digital platform impacting your media?
I don't know if it will impact our media, and it hasn't done, but it's another platform for people to act on. So in one sense, it's amazing because, there's so much work and interesting kinds of work. It depends how much money they put into it, who does it, how seriously it's taken, like any platform. But As a threat to cinema, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, in a way it is, but there is still a kind of a communal viewing experience where you go to the theater together. It becomes a bit of an outing. Sometimes people like to go out of the house and do this. I don't. So there's different markets there, you know.
And is there a third season coming?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe they'll do a prequel or they'll do something else. But as far as it was, the story of the book by Vikram Chandra ends there. So it was a kind of always a two-season thing.
Yep.
Here on this side, I have a request more than a question. By the way, I'm from Bhopal, and I guess that I get to see Ahmedabad Palace more than you do. My request is, Saif, please more of race movies. What's happening to those? I would like to see more of race movies.
Are you talking about different country, religion, I mean, different
Race,
cultures?
I guess the movie you were in.
Black and
Yours,
white?
your race.
Oh, I see. Sorry,
Not today.
trying to make a joke. Yes, I'll ask Mr. Torani. I asked him, race 4.
Yes.
Race was really good fun. It was really good fun. The first one.
Can we have the mic here?
If you can put up your hands, please, we'll get the mic over
There are
to
two
you.
hands here.
So Langra Tyagi or Udaiban, which was more challenging and which one you liked the most?
I don't know. Langra Tyagi was quite challenging back in the day because, again, with the whole, British boarding school thing to speak Haryanvi, people were surprised. So that was cool. They were like, oh, God, I can't believe you did that. So that took some time to learn that. But Udaiban, I think, is a more mature theatrical performance. I'm quite proud of that. It's really difficult to build that out of nothing, and the action was really outstanding. I mean, there were some really good technicians there. So that sword fighting was something I thought was good fun. So I think the most recent is the best.
Okay.
This gentleman back there.
Please put your hands up nicely
poor
so
fellow,
that
if
we
he
can
puts it
see
up
you.
any higher, he's going to get hurt. No?
Yeah, the gentleman there, he's after you. We'll take two more questions.
So, should I
Yes.
go?
Yeah, go.
Okay. My name is Ninad. This question is less about films, but I heard that you read a lot. So, wanted to know what is one book that has inspired you, and
It's
also
really
any
scary, first of all. I'm really made out to be this. I read sometimes, and I read. I love reading. But I read, and I'm like in this really special zone because I read. It's really quite, everyone should read, surely.
Even I read like around 40
like,
books a
you
year, so
read-
wanted to know.
Ah,
from that
sorry,
book.
what?
Even I read around like 40 books a year, so wanted to know.
Oh my God.
That's, I don't do that. I don't do that at all. I should ask you, what's the question?
One book that has inspired you.
One book that's inspired me. I thought the Iliad was quite inspiring if you want to be a warrior. But maybe the Fountainhead, it's a bit of a cliche though to say the Fountainhead now. 'Cause I've been giving the same answer since I've been 18. It is a really inspiring book. We read it, right? We read 40 a week. How many? 40 a year. 40 books a year. Presumably you've read The Fountainhead then. Yeah. And Atlas Shrugged. So those, Ayn Rand is quite inspiring.
Okay. Can we go to that gentleman? He's really
hello.
been... Oh, okay. Yes, she has the mic.
Yes, I have. Sorry. Thank you. Hello, Saif sir. It's such a pleasure to hear you always. Dil Chahta Hai was the most evergreen movie of our times, I may say. It still is, in fact. If you have to pick two friends, from the same chemistry that you shared in the movie with your co-actors, from the film industry, who would they be?
Ooh, I was all set to answer that till you said from the film industry.
Oh, anyone, all right. I mean, film industry, because maybe we'll remember them or know
No,
them.
because I have friends, like two really good friends. One is Mr. Salim Siddiqui, and there's a South American fellow called Andreas Campoma. I would go with them. I mean, a lot of us, I think the reason that film resonated, because you can divide group friends. A lot of people have a kind of trio of friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of that type. So they're archetype people.
Partners in crime, friends in crime.
Yeah,
everything,
and
yes.
you know, you got to really, I don't know if if I have that equation with any film people. I get along very well with all my colleagues, but it's more of a, you know, semi-professional
Right.
kind of equation.
Thank you so much. Wish you great luck with all your releases. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stand up, stand up. You put your hand up, no one's going to listen to you. Okay.
That guy surely was.
Yes, he needs to ask his question.
Saif, you started your speech with the word inequality. So maybe I'll ask you a question that's actually not related to films, but diversifying into your other roles potentially, right? So you are a great brand, right? And some of your ilk are great brands. But you are prophesizing and promoting products, services, what have you. What's your role that you see going forward in nation building? So rather than just prophesizing and professing, can you do something about building a greater nation and reducing that inequality?
You know something? I've sometimes inherited from my father this thing of answering most questions head on, and it's probably got me into a lot of trouble. Recently, I'm telling you, because they ask me things like, you know, something on history, or they say something, and I've read something, and I say something, and it ends up dividing a lot of people, because everyone has a different take on these things for various reasons. So I've realized one thing. The job I do is actually quite a unifying one. Like if you watch a film, you get all kinds of people agreeing with the movie, either it's good or bad. Even in their dislike of the movie, they're united, you know? So I'm going to stick to that as a unifying thing. As an actor, I think we would like to unify the nation, right? Rather than making various comments that might end up dividing ideas. Isn't that a better attitude? I think so. Thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant answer, Saif. And on that note, thank you very much for taking the time, for being here
pleasure.
with us today.
It was all right?
And
Yay. Thank you. Very nice to see all of you.